Do you wave your terrible towel when Renegade plays? Reach for a tasty cake when JJ shouts, "He scores!" Does the sound of an F1 engine make your heart race? Doing push-ups with the Nittany Lion after a TD? Then lend us an ear, and we will share the exhilaration of Steelers football, the excitement of Flyers hockey, the nail-biting finishes of F1, and the pride when we yell, "We are Penn State." Welcome to the SteelFlyers Show, the strangest combination of sports fandom since pineapple was put on pizza. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the SteelFlyers All Sports Network, the SteelFlyers podcast, and boy, oh boy, have we got a very special guest sitting in with us today. That's right, folks, the voice of the Philadelphia Flyers from NBC Sports Philadelphia, Mr. Jim Jackson. How are you, sir?
Doing great, Steel. How are you?
Oh, man, I'm doing great. How's your summer been?
It's been eventful.
Yeah. I mean, you got to be a little bit away from the baseball, so you get to enjoy a little bit of the summer now, right?
I do. We've gone on a couple trips, my family and I, and I did have COVID, had to deal with that, and some other health things going on, but nothing major, and ready to get rolling here. I'm actually, as you know, since you took my classes, start my prep in August, so I'm already starting to dig into prep for the season, even though we're still a ways away yet. But it's around the corner.
Exactly, and it'll be here before you know it. I mean, training camp is about a month away-ish. I mean, we're going to have first preseason games here in about September 24th, so it's not that far away, So how has the broadcasting going and the school going? I mean, you've been doing last year you had camps, right? And so this year you've been just kind of focusing more on the one-on-one?
Yeah, we've been doing the one-on-ones. You get 3 sessions if you do the one-on-ones, just me and you, and had several new, I still have not, even to this day, still come up with a term. You're not students, you're not proteges. We just haven't been able to figure out. But anyhow, people that have taken my course, several.
Learners.
Yeah, what's that?
Learners.
Yeah. I don't know if that one works either.
I don't know. That's just the best I could do.
Yeah, I just haven't been able to, in two and a half years, haven't been able to come up with a good word for it. But more and more, and it's been great. We also had a lot of people who've already taken the classes come back for extra sessions, which is very gratifying. And looking forward to maybe expanding out as we get into the fall and get back into the college season, of reaching out to more schools directly and getting some. A lot of my students, not surprisingly, are from the Philadelphia, New Jersey, Delaware area, which isn't, as I said, not a surprise. I'm trying to branch out now, reach out to other schools. So we'll see how that goes, but still enjoying it. I've had several that have taken another step in their careers, which is extremely gratifying. Had 5 or 6 people graduate from college and 2 or 3 step right into jobs. So
nice.
It's been great. It's been great.
That's always nice when you get to see that kind of end result.
Yeah.
And you get to know that you were a part of helping them to get to that point. You know what I mean? So that has to be very gratifying.
It is. It's almost like all of a sudden, instead of 2 kids, I have about 60. But I do.
Just what you need, right?
Yeah, you spend hours with people, even if it's not you're doing it on Zoom, but you're talking with these people for hours, and you get to know them, and you really pull for them. So very happy to see some of them and take that next step. Others maybe not. There's frustration. I'm here for them as well. It's a tough business. It doesn't go like just a steady incline, and you go zigzagging all over the place. So, but in general, very gratifying, and looking forward to maybe getting some new people in the fall.
Awesome. I mean, as somebody who has gone through most of the courses and would actually like to consider coming back to do another refresher course with you, that I would very much be interested in doing that. But coming from somebody who has taken the course, I can attest to your attention to detail and how blown away I was by how you very much care about what you're doing and what you're teaching. You know what I mean? And it really shows. And I thank you very much for that. And I thank you and appreciate what you're doing for other folks as well too. Because you're right. This is a very difficult business, and it's very difficult to be in this line of work, whether you're in front of the camera, behind the camera, whatever the case is. You know what I mean? So thank you very much for the school and for what you're doing.
Well, I appreciate that, Steel. And what I try to do is you had certain interests in the business that don't necessarily correlate with a guy I have who's a senior in high school. And he's just out there and he's just wants to get in any way, shape, or form. You had specific roles, so I try to cater the classes to each person.
Exactly.
So they aren't the same. And that's why I like the one-on-ones better than a camp, because in a camp, I'm speaking to 10, 12, 14 people all at once. And, you know, they all have different interests. So it's hard for me to really zone in and hone in on exactly where I can help each one of them in a camp setting. Individually, I can do that.
Awesome. And like I said, I can attest to that 100%, having gone through the courses and being able to say that, you know, you have become a mentor to me and somebody that, you know, that I've always looked up to as far as one of the best in the business. I mean, that's why there's the gold trophy sitting there behind you. No, but I mean,
you keep talking, my head's going to be as big as it is, but it's going to be like too big for this screen. So let's get to the Flyers.
All right. So let's get into it a little bit here. And so the Flyers have done a couple things recently, some more recently than others. They've re-signed like a pack load of guys. Okay. And I've had the honor and privilege of watching you do the Broadcasters Corner with the great group of guys there. And then I saw the one where they had Al Morganti step in for you,
yeah,
right?
That was my COVID miss, right there.
Yeah, right. And
Al was not appreciative of it afterwards. He did let me know that he did not appreciate the fact that it was right after the Johnny Gaudreau non-signing. So I was ready to do it. In fact, we were going to do a Zoom roundtable, which we've done obviously in the past. We did that during the pandemic, but they decided they really wanted it in person. No one, and I completely understand.
Yeah.
Positive they didn't want me around them. So
right, yeah, that makes sense.
I missed that one, and it turned into quite an interesting roundtable.
I can only imagine hearing your opinions there. So, but I do enjoy watching you guys sit around and talk about what's going on with the Flyers, because it gives you more of an in-depth look at where you guys are coming from.
Well, I mean, those guys who did that one took some heat for being, you know, with the team and all that. But the bottom line is they all have opinions. Al Morganti is not employed by the team. I'm not, for that matter, officially employed by the team. I'm officially employed by NBC by these guys.
Right.
Now we are all under the same umbrella, Comcast. So, I mean, ultimately, if you go up the chain far enough,
right.
You know, Comcast is so big, you and I are probably coworkers somewhere along the line. You know,
somewhere, you know, yeah.
But anyhow, I don't go on there and speak what the team wants. And if you saw my podcast with Jordan Hall, I basically was very forthright in talking about how my feelings on the Johnny Gaudreau thing. So those people are seeing that. They're probably not even watching the roundtable. They're probably just seeing the clips that are put out. And, you know, Coach C was pretty demonstrative in his opinion about how he felt Delory and that whole getting tougher to play against thing is really going to help this team. And so, you know, some people who, quite frankly, there are some people right now, Steel, who are just so upset with 2 tough seasons in a row and then not getting Gaudreau that no matter what you say, they're just going to jump on you.
Yeah.
Haters will be haters, I believe is what people say.
Yeah.
So you can't do anything about them. And many of them are on social media. So I can't do anything about them. But I know that whenever I've done a podcast or a radio interview, talk show interview, since the Gaudreau non-signing, since free agency, I've been very forthright. I mean, I full disclosure, you know, my son went to the same school as Johnny Gaudreau. Johnny Gaudreau's father coached my son. I know the family.
See, that's why that it means more coming from you.
Yeah, but I'm saying this, full disclosure, I'm biased. I wanted Johnny Gaudreau here for personal reasons too, because I've always wanted to see him play here. But putting that aside, I think he was a perfect fit on the ice. What they need, upfront skill for the power play, in the room. He's friends with 2 or 3 guys on the team, would have been welcomed. And PR-wise, a home run, a local product who wants to play with his team. So I thought there was enough, if I take my own personal feelings out of it, to get him here. But I don't know what these teams were asking of Chuck Fletcher in terms of trying to shed the salary of James Van Riemsdyk or any of the other players that they would have tried to shed. So I can't sit here and tell you he did awful, Chuck, because I don't know. They might have been asking for both first-round picks. Who knows? I do think, and I said this in other podcasts, that the press conference when Chuck came out and said we're not in on Johnny Gaudreau, it didn't sit well with the fan base because it made it sound like they didn't even look into it. And if you don't look into that, the second highest scoring player in the league who wants to play for your team, that would seem to me to be almost dereliction of duty. So I know they looked into it. What I think he was saying was they did not make an offer because they never cleared the cap space. So you can't make the offer if you don't have the money. I mean, they looked into I'm sure every free agent. You look into Malkin. I'm sure they looked into all of them. That's what you do as a general manager and as a staff. So I think off of that presser, it came off like they never even thought about it, which I don't think is the case. But all I can say is he had my 4-point plan for this team. I went over it with when I talked to you last time.
And unfortunately, it's kind of falling apart now.
Yeah, well, good coach. They took care of. Health is already their issues popping up since we talked Farabee and Brink. And the Ellis thing seems to still be out there. But the younger players taking a bigger bite of the team is still very much in play. And I think that will happen under John Tortorella. The 4 was the addition of high-end talent. Tony DeAngelo is high-end talent. I've seen a lot of portrayals of him since the Flyers acquired his rights and then subsequently signed him, that he's almost like this offensive whiz, but complete defensive liability. And that's just not accurate. I mean, he was plus 30 last year playing with a very good player in Jacob Slavin, but facing top lines from other teams on a top team with a great head coach. So if he's really that bad defensively, I don't think Rod Brindamore is going to have him on his top pair playing. He competes. He's a little bit stronger than somebody like Shane Gostisbehere. He does take risks with the puck, which may get him in trouble with John Tortorella. But on the other hand, so does Zach Werenski, who John Tortorella turned into, and obviously he was already a very good player, but John Tortorella didn't hold him back. In fact, helped him get even better. So I don't think that's going to be as big a problem either, the Tortorella DeAngelo thing. I think there are a couple other players that will be a challenge that will be interesting to watch. But I think DeAngelo was a good signing. My concern when the signing took place was there's $5 more million. Where is there going to be room for Johnny Gaudreau? But obviously by then they had pretty much seen that they were the price being asked for the players to shed the salary is probably too great. So I don't think even at that point that Johnny probably was part of the equation. And it's unfortunate because I do think in so many ways he was a perfect fit, but they know more than I do about what was being offered. And without knowing what was being offered, I think it's unfair to just come out and just say they blew it. They did a terrible job.
I mean, it's all speculation.
Yeah,
it's all speculation.
And I will say there are moments when in all sports, general managers have to basically do what's against probably their better judgment and just get it done. Now, usually get it done moments still are, if you have too many of them as a GM, you're in trouble because you're probably giving up a little bit more if you look at the big picture than you want to. But there are certain times where certain free agents are out there or certain players that feel like perfect fits or whatever, that you have to do that. I thought Johnny Gaudreau was that. Obviously, the Flyers did not. And, so we move on.
It's funny that you mentioned that because Lance and I talked about it on the Hockey Writers Inc. show, about where we both agreed that Johnny Gaudreau would have been great in orange and black, and it would have been great seeing him play for the team. It would have been great to see him scoring goals for the team. But, when you kind of pan back and look at how everything kind of fell into place, do you know what I mean? It just seems like there was the fact that he's been saying that he wants to come to Philadelphia for the last 2 years, the fact that he's saying this in the media for the last 2 years. So that would think, maybe just me, I'm thinking out loud here, that you would be, as an organization, going in the back of your mind, going, hey, Johnny Gaudreau really wants to come and play here. Maybe we should try to figure out a way to do this, because he's going to be a free agent in 2 years.
Yeah.
I
want to be clear here. He has not and did not go to the media and say that. He was very careful with what he said in Calgary. He said, when you ask him, and we did interviews with him early in his career. Yes, as a kid, I always wanted to play for the Flyers. He said that, but he did not say, when my contract is up, I want to go play for the Flyers.
No.
Very careful about that. But
no, I'm not saying that at all.
Yeah, he got word to people on the team, on the Flyers team, that he wanted to come here, and I already knew I know him, and I know his family, and I didn't need him to tell me. I've known. So yeah, I understand your point. This is not like 5 days before the free agency period that all of a sudden the Flyers found out this guy wanted to play for them. They've known. And really, I never saw a fit here until Gaudreau was traded.
Agree.
Because G and Johnny are similar players. I think at this point, Johnny being 5 years younger is a better player. Both good players still. One great, I think, and one still very good. Let's put it that way. Yeah. But I don't think that when G was here, there was any need for Johnny Gaudreau. They're both skilled, smaller guys and so forth. But once they traded Giroux, to me, from that day, that's when I would have started to say, okay, including the Giroux trade itself, let's figure out a way to get Johnny Gaudreau here. But that wasn't necessarily their thinking, but also the fact that they, again, knew more than we did as to what was being bandied about in terms of what they had to attach to any of the players they were going to trade to shed salary. And that's the big unknown out there. I'm assuming it was a hefty price.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. We saw what he signed for in Columbus, and I wish him the best. I really do. I hope that he does.
I don't wish him the best. I wish him health and all that. I don't wish him to be really good against the Flyers, though. He's in the Flyers division.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Well, from what I understand, though, his wife is a pediatric nurse, and Columbus has one of the best pediatric hospitals in, all of this side of the planet. You know what I mean? So
it's not, everyone, I heard New Jersey and the Islanders and people saying he wants to come, back home. That wasn't home to him. Columbus is just as much home as the Islanders and New Jersey to Johnny Gaudreau. Home was the Flyers. And, when they could not and did not make an offer, he had to find something else. And I think Columbus is a very nice fit for him. He got a great contract, and I think he's going to have a great run. I really do. But, the Devils talk in particular, because North Jersey to South Jersey is basically like Connecticut to South Jersey. It's not really home for Johnny. Now, he would have been closer, hour and a half drive, to play in New Jersey. So the fact that he chose Columbus kind of tells you, since I don't think it was a money thing, that it was really all about the Flyers. And when the Flyers weren't in, he opened it up.
Yeah. And that makes complete sense. You know what I mean? And so, okay, in the wake of not signing Johnny, the Flyers had quite a plethora of players that they have re-signed. I mean, we're talking Tanner Lazinski, we're talking Zach McEwen, we're talking Morgan Frost, we're talking Isaac Radcliffe. I mean, all of these guys have been re-signed now. I mean, and that's kind of the other side of that Johnny Gaudreau coin, right? Where he was going to cost the team, umpteen buckets of money, and it was only going to be one player where, okay, I split that up and I can get 3 players for that kind of money.
It's true. These were all restricted free agents.
Yep.
They, I'm sure, had a pretty good idea. Zach, the only one that came close to arbitration. I'm pretty sure that they had a pretty good idea where they were going to go with these guys and the money they're making. I mean, Morgan Frost actually came in pretty low. I thought he might be a little bit higher. So these players did not cost a lot of money still. So I think it really was more about, a $7 million player like JVR that they could not, or maybe didn't want to move. And obviously when they signed D'Angelo for 5, those numbers that's where it just doesn't fit. Now, Ryan Ellis may go on long-term, and if he goes on long-term and then Brink and Farabee, more so Farabee goes on long-term, all of a sudden you had the money. You could do it the way Vegas has done it or Tampa Bay and worry about the salary cap later.
Yeah, see, we talked about that.
Yes, as we know in Flyers land lately, by the time Ellis is back, or he might be long-term again. Let's say Farabee. Farabee should be back relatively early in the season. Somebody else probably is hurt. They can go on long-term injury, and So that was the other theory out there from people who were upset they didn't get Gaudreau because, why you've got a couple of guys who look like they might be injured already, and probably somebody else is going to get injured. Why make the decision not to go after him so quickly? But
and you can spend 10% of the cap, right? And as long as you're compliant by day 1 of the season, like that's what Tampa Bay has done. Yeah. And why can't the Flyers do that? I mean, isn't that what the general manager is supposed to be doing, pulling that kind of stuff off? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, and again, it would indicate that his desire to get Johnny wasn't as great as mine. I know it wasn't as great as mine, but or the fans. I mean, I've heard some people talk about his size. I mean, Coatsy talked about this size in the playoffs, and
right.
I don't buy that. I'm sorry. I watched their playoffs. He was pretty good this year in the playoffs. I mean, when they lost Edmonton, it had a lot more to do with their goaltending and their defense than it did Johnny Gaudreau. But I mean, I would rather have him on my team than not in the playoffs. Let's put it that
I'm
way.
with you on that. I'm with you.
So,
I would just rather.
And I don't like when you don't get a player or a player leaves to bash the player. I heard some things about G after they traded him. I don't like that stuff. It's not nice. It's not good. G meant a lot to this franchise. Shouldn't be getting bashed after he's moved. And Johnny Gaudreau has never done anything to this franchise. I mean, he's hurt us on the ice because he's with other teams. But I mean, start talking about his size. I mean, I do have concerns about the Flyers' general size. If they were to have gotten Johnny Gaudreau, they probably would have had to have gotten rid of one of the other smaller forwards, whether it be Brink or Travis Konechny or whomever, because you can't have too many small forwards. But if one of your small forwards happens to be second or third in the league in scoring, yeah, you probably can deal with that, So it's an interesting dynamic of to where this all went. But the thing is, as you said, it's over, and they move on. And my 4-point plan, if you consider D'Angelo the upgrade in terms of top-end talent, I do believe Tony is. I think they probably needed some more up front. But so let's say that's a partial check, not even a half check, but at least a partial. Yeah. I think the coach is a full-fledged check. I love John Tortorella as their coach. I think he's going to do a great job. And his staff hires. Shaw is an outstanding coach from a defensive standpoint. And I think you'll see the penalty kill really improve. And Rocky Thompson's, I'm doing reading on him. It's quite interesting, some of the things he's done with some power plays. So we'll see about the coaching staff, but I think that's a solid check. The health issue is a wavering check right now.
That would be putting that mildly.
We can't do it until the season starts. So we'll see. And then the players, again, taking a bigger bite out of the team, the Farabys, the Yorks, and even the young veterans who are now in the middle of their careers, Sanheim, Provorov, and Konechny. I mean, that has to happen. And I think under John Tortorella and this coaching staff, it can. In fact, I'm pretty confident it will happen. That's why I still think this team's going to be better this year. How much better, I'm not sure, but I think they'll be better. Okay.
One of the things that we really haven't focused much on is goaltending.
Yeah.
And I'm having a hard time kind of putting my faith in just Carter Hart being a 23-year-old number one goaltender who's only won 18 games in the last 2 years, and a backup goaltender who has less than 10 games in the NHL, and he's 32. Do you know what I mean? Like, is that really who the team is just going to put out there and go, okay, this is who it's going to be?
Well, there are veteran goalies that are always going to be available. Almost every team has a guy with NHL experience who's playing in the AHL. Flyers may not be one of them this year, although it's quite possible Felix Sandstrom's your backup. But if it's Sandstrom, then you do have a veteran with some, not a lot, NHL experience in the minors. But a lot of teams have guys who played 3-4 years in the NHL, at least parts of that, in the minors, and those guys can become available as the season goes along. So I think they can go out and get that if they need to fill that need. I think they want to see where Sandstrom is. I was very impressed with how he played with the Flyers last year. I mean, he's a guy they've invested a lot in this guy, not in terms of salary, but in terms of time, in terms of development. He's had his injury issues, but I mean, they got to see on him. I do think this is going to be a great year for Carter Hart. I think that he will, for the first time since the first part of 2019-2020, he's going to have a team with structure in front of him. And again, this is all reliant upon the team being somewhat healthy. But the John Tortorella teams, just go back and look at his teams and look at the goals of his teams. So they've had good numbers because they block shots, they protect the house. And I think Carter Hart, if healthy, is going to have his best year. And so I'm positive overall on goaltending because that's the most important thing. Carter Hart's success and health is the most important thing about the goaltending situation. The backup, important, not as important as Carter Hart. So the most important part about goaltending, I'm really very optimistic about. The backup, I'm not willing to just say that it's going to be Grossrich. I think it's going to be, it could very easily be Sandstrom. And Urson's another guy who's not ready yet, but that could be coming. And they obviously they've had a tough situation they've got to figure out. But there's things down the road goaltending wise that are all right. But immediately, who's the backup and how much experience? It's a little dicey. They don't have a Martin Jones, they don't have a Brian Elliott, that's for sure.
And they're going to need somebody to come in and at least be able to, post up 25, 30 games because Carter Hart is not that player. He's not playing 70, 80 games. You know what I mean?
I think Felix Sandstrom's quite capable of that. I really do. And I mean, it's a risk because he hasn't done it yet. And neither is the other guy. So, before you've seen it, I mean, it's almost like anxiety, fear of the unknown.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, fear of the unknown. But where they are salary cap wise, I was ready for these kind of risks to be taken if they had done what we were talking about earlier, because you had to sacrifice some areas in order to. They didn't do that. They didn't go out and get Johnny Gaudreau. So I thought maybe they'd have room for a little bit more in terms of a veteran goalie, but they didn't. They went out and got Tony DeAngelo, and they, of course, had the upgrades in salaries to Couturier and Farabee kick in. And they went out and re-signed all these restricted free agents, small contracts, but they all added up. And before you know it, they're at the cap.
And that's kind of where we even broached that subject too. There's like what Tampa Bay or Vegas has done. And like, hey, you could spend 10% of the salary cap to get players on the team. And as long as you're compliant by day one, you were good. And like you said, guarantee there's going to be some guys on long-term IR, and that's more money in the bucket. You know what I mean? And now so it's like you potentially could have some money there, but it just doesn't seem like, I mean, like, we're not privy to what happens there on a daily basis. We're not privy to what happens behind closed doors. And, you know, all we can do is speculate based off of what's being released out into the press, you know? And so that's kind of where we're at this point.
That is exactly where we're at. And it's at this point, it's history. The team, we're going forward with what the Flyers have right now. And as I said, I've talked to fans all the time. I'm looking forward to the season. They're going to play a style that Philadelphia likes. Now, I anticipate, because I've sensed it. It's not hard to find. If you go to social media, the angst, the disappointment, the frustration, all that from fans. So I expect empty seats and all that. But if they win, Steel, I almost called you your real name. Steel, if they win and they play this hard-nosed hockey, tough to play against, physical, all that, the fans will eventually come back. I mean, the win part's the most important thing. If they're competitive, they'll come back. It'll take a little while. It's not like they're going to come back for the 5th game of the year, but they will come back. I mean, winning is the biggest marketing tool you can have. I mean, that's what they're banking on, I think. The people who think they're tanking, give me a break. If they're tanking, why do they sign Tony DeAngelo? I mean, they're not tanking.
I'm not. I hate that word.
Oh, well, I do too. It's a ridiculous thing. I mean, we can go into a whole show on tanking and people saying, you got to go with a Colorado model. Well, they didn't tank, first of all, Colorado. They just got bad for a couple of years. And then their rebuild was a double clutch. Their rebuild started when they picked O'Reilly and Duchesne, who aren't even here. They aren't even in Colorado.
Yeah.
So it was not like smooth. They went down and they got back up. It was like they went down again, then they came back up, and then Bednar came in and did a great job, and they took off. And they lucked into Cale Makar to some degree. So,
you have to attribute that to Joe Sakic, though. I mean, he really has made a huge difference in Colorado, and I think
they did a great job. But what I'm saying is they're not Stanley Cup champions because they said we're tearing it down and we're rebuilding. I mean, they just got bad. They tried to rebuild once and it really didn't work, and then they did it again, and they used some of the assets they got in the trades for the players I talked about earlier. So it's all part of it. But you think about Buffalo; they've been picking high for years, hasn't meant anything to them. Edmonton had all those first overall picks, did nothing. They lucked into Connor McDavid. They won the lottery big time. They moved way down, got him, and still he's heading into his 8th year, I believe, right? 8th year. They haven't been to the finals yet. So don't tell me that tearing it down and doing maybe what the Sixers did, being bad for 3 straight years. Let's see, the Sixers, have they been past the 2nd round? I don't believe so. It guarantees you nothing. It guarantees you nothing. It's much better. You're going to have to build through the draft, but not necessarily through the top 5 picks of the draft. You have to do what Tampa's done. Come up with a Braden Point in the 2nd round. Come up with some of these players lower in drafts. That's why Tampa's so good for so long. They have done a remarkable job with draft picks below the 1st round. Yeah, they have a couple 1st rounders, but below the 1st round guys, and then they've done a great job supplementing with free agents and trades to keep this thing alive as long as they can. That had nothing to do with bottoming out for 3 years so they could get 3 really high picks, and that's going to turn your franchise around.
Right.
Pittsburgh did it, Steele. Pittsburgh did it. And you know what? They did it because they had, 3 straight years? Where
3 straight years.
Malkin, Fleury? Those are
Malkin, Fleury, and Crosby.
Yeah, 3 generational players. That doesn't happen very often. There was no generational player in this last draft. So at least we don't think. We don't know that either. That's the thing.
Right. But
Connor Bedard, they were talking about him being one, but we don't know. We don't know that Connor Bedard is going to be generational.
Yeah, but they pretty much came out and said
generational. Before his last year, before his draft eligible year, you were hearing this kid is unbelievable. He's going to be the next superstar. Then he got injured, didn't have a great draft year, and fell into sort of a 1A with Hischier. And 3 guys behind those 2 are better than both of those guys.
Yeah,
won that draft. So I mean, it's a crapshoot. The draft is
It
a
is.
crapshoot.
It
So
always
that
is.
being the case, so is tanking. It's a crapshoot. And for people to want to tank, I just don't buy it. I just don't think it's a failed. It's got all kinds of peril out there, and there are tons of examples with teams.
And to come out and say that that's what you're going to do, you know what I mean? That's a bad.
Did that. Sixers came right out and said, "Trust the process. We're tanking," and they were awful for 3 straight years. Well, that got them Embiid, but it also got them Fultz. Where's he? Not here. You know, and they didn't take off. In fact, if they do finally win it, and I hope they do, I like the Sixers. If they do finally win it, it really wasn't the process anymore. The process was so long ago. All that's left from it is really Joel, right?
That's right. That's it. You know.
And they kind of got lucky with him. He had an injury, so he slipped a couple spots. I mean, tanking is just not part of it. I'm glad the Flyers aren't tanking.
And in any sport.
I've seen guys who cover the team for years put that in their stories. It's now looking like a tanking season. No, they went out and got Tony DeAngelo. If you're tanking, you don't go out and trade 3 draft picks and sign a guy for $5 million a year who has some, issues off the ice. If you're tanking, you just don't.
Yeah.
I mean, they signed him because they think he can help this team. They think he's been able to corral the off ice stuff, and last year certainly was an indication he has. There's no tanking going on here. So, and some of the players you talked about still have remnants of COVID. So I apologize for the coughs once in a while.
Oh, that's okay.
Some of the players you talked about, the Isaac Radcliffes, these are players that I'm really looking forward to seeing under John Tortorella, that I think could be better than we think they are. I mean, Isaac Radcliffe has skill. He's got grit. We saw that. And he showed last year he can play a 4th line role if not called upon. But he could be a 4th line role player who ends up on the power play. Your net front presence guy. He's got lots of skill. He can shoot. He can finish. And Morgan Frost, I want to see where he goes with a new coach. There's a lot of things going on here. It's not all negative.
I agree. And it's going to be basically a moving target for probably the first couple months until everybody kind of buys into the system, until they, because that's what I think Tortorella is going to do for this team. Yeah, I think he's going to weed out the guys that aren't going to buy in.
Well, he does. He does that. Now, more than weed out, he gives them a shot to buy in, and sometimes with
that's what I mean. Yeah, you get a shot to buy in, but if you're not, then he's going to be moving on. And he's also been historically very good for goaltenders.
Well, there's a reason for that. He's good with communicating with goalies, or at least with the goalie coach, and he believes in Kim Dillaba. But more so is what we talked about earlier. The system that he likes to play is protect the house, block shots, and then go to offense. And as I said, Carter hasn't really had that kind of system performed well. At least we can say that. I mean, early in the AV's first year, the Flyers were allowing the fewest shots, and not early, all the way to
pretty much, all the way through,
the league in fewest shots allowed. So there was a little bit of that, but AV's system was not necessarily protect the house. They just were doing a really good job checking all over the ice with that system. I think Carter's going to enjoy this system. He's not going to have to make 38 saves anymore. He might have to just make 25 saves to allow 1 goal.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah, and the thing is, and I've pointed this out many times, last year, with almost 500 man games lost to injury, including their best center and their second best center for most of the year, and their second best defenseman, maybe their best defenseman for the entire year outside of 4 games, and many other players, they still were within 1 goal in the third period in something like 86% of their games. So
I saw that. Yeah.
If you take those games and give them 1 power play goal every 2 games, you're adding probably a good 8 or 9 wins to your total.
I was just going to say that's like a 0.333%.
Yeah, and that's just one element. Then you add to the element playing better defensively, which I think we're going to see. That probably gets you some more wins. So they, as bad as their record was last year, they were in a lot of games that they just couldn't make that play in the end. And obviously that's what separates winners and losers. But it's not like they were getting blown out on a nightly basis. So I don't think they were that far away. I think the addition of Couturier, Hayes, both healthy, and Ellis by itself would have brought this team with the coaching change to a much better level. You throw in D'Angelo, it's going to help. But the one caveat to all that is they had Claude Giroux for most of the season. They traded him, and they still haven't replaced his production. So
exactly
that is where I'm concerned about where the goals are going to come from. They are going to rely on Travis Konechny rediscovering his scoring touch, and some of those other younger players. Maybe a Tyson Forster emerges. Maybe Noah Cates. Some of these younger players, Farabee for sure, when he gets healthy, are going to have to produce because they're missing their leading scorer over the last decade in terms of points. So, and they haven't acquired anybody up front to replace that. So that's going to be where we see. Now, again, they're going to play better defensively. They're not going to need as much offense, but they still need offense. You got to score goals still.
I mean, and one of the guys that I think is going to be one of the key factors moving forward in scoring goals and being that it factor on the ice, being that guy that when he jumps over the boards, you have to have your head on a swivel and see where he is at all times. And I think that's Owen Tippett. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how he's going to play. I mean, we saw how he flashed last year in 21 games he played, right? With the trade.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the amount of chances and everything. If you
he hit about 8 posts. So.
That's what I mean. If you hone this kid and coach him up with getting him in a good system and everything like that, and
I mean, really, Steel, it's what it's all about. You've got Konechny, Tippett, Farabee. These are players that are either youngsters or young veterans that are going to have to take a bigger bite out of this team, and in particular with those three, score goals. I do think Tyson Forster is an interesting. Just keep an eye on this guy. I'm telling you.
Trust me, I really have high hopes for him.
I don't know if it'll be this year, but I do think this guy can be a real goal scorer.
Yeah.
And then there could be a sleeper guy like Radcliffe. So there's no doubt when we go to camp, that's what we got to be looking for, because they didn't go out and acquire offensive help up front. D'Angelo's going to help. Remember, D'Angelo will help the power play. That's going to help other players get goals too. But they didn't go out and get that, playmaker or goal scorer up front. So it has to come from within unless they have another move up their sleeves. And from within means the guys we just talked about. So
exactly.
And of course, getting Couturier back. I mean, they're going to need 25 to 30 from Couturier in his usual solid play, and Kevin Hayes being healthy all year. Earlier, I referenced a couple of players that you really have to watch in terms of melding with the coaching staff, and the two are Travis Konechny and Kevin Hayes. These are two players who are freelance by nature, and that isn't usually a way to get in the good graces of John Tortorella. Now, I don't want to say this to mean John Tortorella crushes creativity. He's been very specific about that point in almost every media availability he's had. And one of his favorite players, and one of the players who likes him most of his former players, is Artemi Panarin. You can't get much more freelance than Artemi Panarin. So I'm not saying this to say that you better fit the cookie cutter mold of John Tortorella and not even be creative, just up and down your wing and be good defensively. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is he has a specific system he wants his team to play. Most of that system is take care of your own end before you worry about the other end. Once you're the other end, be as creative as you want to be.
Yeah.
As long as you're not risking the other, the defensive.
Yeah.
So, they have to fit with that. And I don't think it was any coincidence that in his opening presser done by Zoom, he mentioned Kevin Hayes as a guy he's really looking forward to working with. I think that he understands he's got to have Kevin Hayes with him. He's got to have Travis Konechny with him. And if he does, I think those two both will have great years, first of all, and the
Yeah.
team certainly has a much better chance to have a very good
Yeah.
year.
I agree with you 100%. I mean, and he even said it in just exactly what you're saying in the number of the interviews that he has done. He said that that's one of the things that he's learned over the years from being, coaching of all these other players, where you have to allow guys that are creative to be creative. You can't stifle that in players.
Yeah, he's learned that. He said he learned that as his career's gone on.
Right. Exactly. But you have to make them still accountable. So they still have to do exactly what you said, and they still have to play, responsible in their end. And then once you get down into the offensive end, then, hey, let it fly,
Right. I mean, just let it fly. I mean, you also, in the offensive zone, have to do things responsibly, because you can leave yourself, in rushes.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah.
But he does not. Just ask Artemi Panarin. Panarin loved him. And he is, you just watch him out there. He's on his own course sometimes out there. So, when you're that skilled, you can do that. And that would be like John Cooper trying to corral Nikita Kucherov. I mean, if you watch Kucherov play, he's not an up and down winger. I mean, he's all over the place. He does take risks and occasionally gives up the puck.
And I was just going to say, yeah.
But, and Tony DeAngelo is kind of that. He's a defenseman, but he's that kind of player too. He's just gonna have to make sure he isn't making too many of those high risk, low chance of reward passes, because you'll get on the bench and eventually be a scratch with John Tortorella. He does not. He'll scratch anybody. So that is his way of coaching, and that is his way of getting his message across. So we could have a bumpy ride in the early part of the season, as you mentioned. It might take a little while. We could have some friction, or we maybe not. One thing I will say about John is he communicates. So I don't think there's going to be any surprise.
Yeah,
in players.
The press conferences are going to be interesting. That's for sure.
Yeah, they won't be boring. That is for sure. And all he expects from you as a player, as a reporter, is give your best effort and be respectful. Obviously, if you're a reporter, sometimes I think he snaps and, maybe isn't respectful. He's said that sometimes he's done that. But if you ask a question that criticizes a player, be prepared.
Yeah.
Tortorella is going to defend his players.
Yeah. And that's the thing. And that's one of the things that, from what I've read of people that, like John Tortorella, that's what they like about him, is that he is that kind of guy where he's going to stick up for his players and stuff like that. Now, you're not going to be able to win everybody over. You know what I mean? And there's just as many people who didn't like him as a coach as there are that did. Do you know what I mean?
Disagree with that. I would disagree with that.
I've heard both sides.
Percentage of players who didn't like him, but largely players like playing for John Tortorella.
All I was trying to say is that I've heard both sides of the coin. Yep. So
I'm assuming Brandon Dubinsky is one of them, and Matthew Barnaby. I believe a couple of these guys have been vocal about it, but like you say, you can't please everybody.
That's what I mean. That's all I was trying to say, is that he's going to rub some people the wrong way, and whatever the case is, and that's just how it's going to have to be. But that's why I think there's going to be some of that growing pains in the beginning of the season, because people are going to have to learn, where do they stand with him, and he's going to have to learn. It's going to be that growing period to find out.
It's with any coaching staff, but
yeah,
with John, with Torts, it's not usually a low volume growing pains. So
right.
So it will be entertaining from a fan standpoint and from a media standpoint, I'm sure. But more times than not, I mean, take the Vancouver experience out. He rounds them into shape. And,
yeah.
I mean, really, John is a superhuman being if you get to know him at all. And I think he's been able to, as he's gotten a little bit older, parlay his great personality, the great human that he is, and to getting by some of the other stuff with players. There's going to be times when they're mad, but it's just like when I was a kid. No one I revered more than my dad, but there were still times when my dad disciplined me or did stuff, wouldn't let me do something that I wasn't really happy with him. So you're going to have times like that, but I mean, I still respected my father more than any human being on the earth. And I think John will get respect even if he does ruffle feathers sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the case too. And you know what, Jim, we had a great opportunity to sit here and talk great Flyers hockey. Looking forward to seeing what this team can do this year. I'm very cautiously optimistic about how things are going to go for this team. I'm hoping and praying for the best. And
I think you're emphasizing the caution more than you are the optimism. But
right. Okay.
Listen, I think it's gonna be an interesting training camp for all the reasons we already discussed.
Yeah.
We should get together again after camp or right before the season, because some of the questions are going to be answered by then.
Yes, they will be.
Many that will not be, but at least we can talk more about and have a better idea of John Tortorella, his impact on the team, and that through the camp and preseason games. But I do think they'll be better. Again, that all is based upon them being healthier. They've got to be healthier to be better. But I do think that John's going to have a positive impact. I do think some of the other players are going to take a bigger bite out of the team.
Yep.
I think Tony's going to help the power play. The power play, we haven't talked about that, but it has to be better. It has to be at least, let's say, middle of the pack. Doesn't have to be the best power play in the league, but middle of the pack.
Yeah, we need to be in the teens.
Yes.
Yeah.
That in itself will win them 3 or 4 games. So
yeah.
So there's that too. But I'm ahead. I'm not, no lie, I'm optimistic every year. But I do think there are reasons to be optimistic. I mean, we have to put the other stuff behind us and settle in on the team that they have and see what we've got come mid-September.
I mean, that's basically what it boils down to. This is the team that's going to go out on the ice, and this is what we got to deal with. So here it is. You know what I mean? Whether you like it or not, this is what it is, right? So That's kind of why I'm more cautious than optimistic. So. But
we all have caution among us, but they're really, I can't imagine they're going to be awful if they're healthy with John Tortorella as the coach. I think he will have them competitive on a nightly basis. If they aren't, he will make changes. Philadelphia, its history in all the sports, loves competitive, tough to play against, grinded out teams. I think that's what they're going to get. So that is a positive. Do they have enough goal scoring? Do they have enough firepower up front to be a Stanley Cup contender? That would be, I think, right now a reach. But by the end of the season, who knows?
Yeah.
Some of these young guys develop, or if they're in the hunt at the trade deadline, maybe they go out and get a player. So, salary cap would seem to be a restriction on that. But by then, they might have 2 or 3 players on LTIR. So, March is a long way away. But
yeah,
I think they're going to be competitive. That's the most important thing right now for this club, is to have that bite. They got to move forward with it, build off of it, and then find ways to score goals.
Yep, I'm with you on that 100%. Jim, I can't thank you enough. This has been an absolute honor and a privilege and a pleasure to have you on and to get to sit here and talk Flyers hockey with you. Why don't you tell the folks about your school, the website for your school, and how to get signed up for the classes?
Yeah, the website is jimjacksonbroadcasting.com. We've simplified it. You can go to that website and everything's there for you, including a link to the coaching, a link to my voiceovers and everything else. So that's where you go. And then you'll have a description there, and then you can see where you would fit and what package you might want. And I'm, even once the season starts, I continue to do the classes around my schedule. So even though I'm wide open through the rest of August and into the first half or so of September, I get busier after that, but I still continue to do the classes. So just check it out, and we'd love to have you.
Awesome. And I can say from a complete and utter gone through the course already, you really need to go and take this course, because you get to learn from one of the best in the business right here. He personalizes the course for you so that it's geared towards exactly what you want to learn. And the fact that your attention to detail allows you to be able to take that personal touch and be able to teach us students, learners, whatever you want to call us, to be able to get what we need out of the courses. So thank you very much for that, and really appreciate you doing the courses. So we'll have a link for that in the description here for this site. So if you guys want to go and sign up for the course, all you have to do is click on the link, and just like Jim said, everything will be there. Thank you all very much for checking us out. I'm SteelFlyers for the SteelFlyers All Sports Network. Thank you, Jim, very much for having us on and for being here and talking Flyers hockey. And we'll catch you after training camp. So we'll see if some of those questions get answered. Just remember, folks, stay safe, stay strong, and hang tough.